Hi everyone. I wanted to go over your syllabus with you, and this is actually my first Loom recording, which is really quite fun. I'm really excited about how nicely this works to share screens. So welcome to Old Testament 500. I'm going to start on the written assignment page, and then we'll go to the start of the syllabus. But the one thing I want to point out to you, the very first thing I want you to hear from me is assignment number 4. Your major paper will be handed in at the end of week 9, as you can see here. The reason for this is that, first of all, we're going to work on the paper all term, so you'll be really well ready to hand it in at the end of week 9. It gives me a little more time to get things graded for you because we have to turn things in and turn them around rather quickly at the end of term. But it also will leave a little bit of room in case something happens. Now, something generally happens to someone. One time I broke my shoulder right in the middle of term and had to deal with that. So those things that happen, sometimes we don't want to leave an assignment too close to the end because there wouldn't be any way to recover it. So week 9 it is, and this is a really good example of something linguists would call the privilege of primacy. So the very first thing you've heard from me is the very last thing you're going to hand in, and linguists have proven that the thing you remember the most is the thing you hear first. So that's the reason why you're going to hear about assignment number 4 being handed in at week 9. This is an important part of our class because it is your major signature assignment. Now, I'm going to wheel this right back to the very beginning and go over the syllabus a bit with you. Course is Old Testament 500 and it's spring 2021. So here's my phone number. If you need to call me, 206-941-9655, and email beth_hayes@fuller.edu. So you can come back here if you need to find out those things. I love having phone calls because the thing I really miss being an online professor mostly is that we don't get to talk face to face. So if you ever call me, you're going to probably end up with a long call because it's so much fun to sit talking. And so always feel free. I'm very open and very willing to talk with you. A really good thing to do maybe is to drop an email and say, I'd like to talk to you between this time and that time. And that way I can be not doing something at the same time, and we can sit down and have a chat. I try to get the emails returned to you within 24 hours during the week. On the weekend, it might be a little longer because I might be taking a long run or doing something like that. But I generally try to keep track of things and get back with you fairly soon. If you have an emergency, please call anytime. And you can also write an email and include urgent in the subject line, and that way I'll catch that and it will catch my eye and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. Okay, so this course is actually a course that focuses on the literature of the Old Testament in its context. So we're going to look at literary, historical, theological contexts, and to look at Old Testament interpretation in service of Christian practice. Because we do share this book, these books with the Jewish community for whom it is their entire Bible. For us, it's the sort of the precursor, and then we get the New Testament, and we deal with the whole thing together. So we want to look at how Old Testament is going to work in our Christian practice. But I like to stay really focused on the Old Testament text. So I have to admit that a lot of times I keep steering people back to it because we don't really spend enough time on it in general. So you can see here the different books we're going to study. Sometimes the class seems to be a little disjointed because we're going from book to book every week. The one underlying concept that I like to stick with through the whole class is this idea of reading well. So whether we're reading Genesis, Daniel, Psalms, whatever it is we're reading, we want to concentrate on how to read that genre and that text really well. So that's kind of our underlying thought as we're learning how to work with Old Testament text. There are several learning outcomes that you may want to have a look at on your own. The basic thing is to have a grasp of the contents of the scripture, history, and geography as it impinges upon Israel. The second thing is to use interpretive approaches that explore literary features and historical and cultural context. So we're going to concentrate a lot on those things here. We're going to look at different kinds of interpretive issues or hermeneutical issues that come up in the different contexts that contemporary readers live in. So how do we deal with things when we have different kinds of contexts? And we have a very diverse class, just people within the class. And so we have a lot of contemporary diversity represented together. And I find it really helpful to ask good questions. So we spend some time talking about that and asking good questions. What does this mean in your contemporary setting? And it's surprising sometimes how different the contemporary setting can be and how important it is to look at how the scripture and theology will be kind of interacting with that. We want to look at how Old Testament can be related to Christian theology, to Christian mission, and to discipleship. And sometimes Old Testament doesn't seem like a natural fit there. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to ask the hard questions when we get to them, and talk about how does this work, because it is part of our scripture. It's meant to be there for us. And so how do we resolve things like imprecatory psalms, for example? So then we want to take all of these things and use them to interpret some key Old Testament texts. And for you, that will be, in particular, the psalm you're going to write your paper on. So you will be picking out one psalm to work on for the whole term and asking all those questions and working around all the issues using that particular text as a focus. Okay, I'm going to skip on the learning outcomes. You can take a look at that yourself. Just note that we're in class here for 10 weeks, just like everybody else on the Fuller academic calendar for spring term. We have a total of 40 instructional hours, and some of those you'll be spending writing different kinds of forums and talking with your friends, doing a lot of reading. Okay, so if you look at our required reading, it's 1,051 pages of required reading. I found an extra page when I re-added it the other day, so I had to change that to 1,051. A lot of it's going to be in scripture text. So I want you to really relax and lean into your scripture text this term. Don't look at it like you're going to have an exam on each of these books, but look at it as becoming more acquainted with them, especially the parts you may not have read before. So just kind of lean into it and really enjoy it, because there's a lot in there, a lot of diversity, a lot of sort of fun stuff to read. Some things that will keep you up at night. I find that Jeremiah 1-6 that I did my PhD thesis on keeps me up at night sometimes when I think about it. So lean into it and feel all the feels with it. It's really a lot of interesting text for you. Now, the main other textbook we're going to use is called A Brief Introduction to the Old Testament, 4th edition. Please do not get a hold of edition 1, 2, or 3. The pagination is different in all of those. You want the 4th edition, and you can either get it in a hard copy, or you can get it online and rent it online through this link at vitalsource.com right here. And that will give you access to the book for as long as you'll need it for our class. And it's a really good option to have if you're not living close by where a book can be delivered very handily. So I was extremely glad to see that it's available like this. We've had people missing their book for quite a while they waited for it in the past. Now, Fuller Library has done really well in the past few years at getting a lot of materials online. And so the very first section here in the required reading are the books that are available online through the Fuller Library. Bernard Anderson, Adele Berlin, McCann Psalms, and Jean-Louis Ska. Jean-Louis Ska is actually a man. Okay, so when you get to filling out that discussion post, remember that Jean-Louis Ska is actually a man. I've had him referred to as a she before, but he's really a very lovely he. And so any of those books are available to you to purchase as well. Those of you who really may want to go farther with the Psalms, this book, you can usually find it on Amazon or one of the other sales sites for a really good low price. It's not usually $30. So you may want to think of that. Now, there's a second group here called Articles and Book Sections linked to the Fuller Library via Canvas. That's a long way of saying that I took a lot of links and put them into your course, kind of the course area, into the modules, especially during weeks 1 and 2. Those 2 weeks are really top heavy with extra reading. The reason for that is that if you get at some of that reading early in the term, you can always go back to some things And it leaves the rest of the term more free for your paper writing and other things that you're going to want to be reading on your own. Now, again, when you're reading these articles, there's lots and lots of them. Don't feel like you have to memorize them, but rather go through and look for really the high points. See if you can find some of the main points and let yourself read in the areas especially that you're curious about. But please don't feel like you need to come back and be able to do an exam from these, for example. What I want you to be able to do is go, I remember that so-and-so said something about this topic, and I want to go back in and quote them. So I'll expect you to show me that you've been reading by including some references to these different articles in the appropriate place when you're writing a discussion forum. Okay, so on the one hand, you're kind of building an Old Testament library of readings, and on the other hand, you're going to then turn around and use some of them as you're writing your discussion posts. You do not need to reiterate the entire thing. Just include enough that we know you've been there. Maybe concentrate on one good idea, for example, as you're writing up your forum posts. And that will come clear as the time comes. Okay, I've also included some other things on the course page. I think I've included one or two of my own things there that you can read. And probably there'll be a few more things that are added. But again, the point is to develop a good basic library of resources that you can go back to. So I don't expect like complete and total recall in any of this stuff. It's mainly read it, become familiar with it, find the things that you're curious about. And those are the things that will carry you through some of these other ideas. I've included some recommended reading that might be handy for when you start writing your paper. Okay, so feel free to have a look at some of these. I think some of these are on in the Fuller Library, available as ebooks as well. Okay, let's really quick look at our assignments and talk about the assignments and then the way that I will be looking at your assignments to grade. So the first thing you'll do each week is to go in and check out the reading and class activities. And I try to keep my video lectures pretty short. They're not long, but they do open up some questions for you and raise up some ideas that you may want to chase down during the course of the week. I will try to also include some visual presentations and especially put in some good music. I think I've got one or two things in there already, and there's more that I'd love to throw in there for you, like something on Jael and Sisera, or something on Lamentations. For example, there's some really interesting and good musical scores that can kind of fill in and add to our way of looking at the scriptures for that week. Each week you're going to have one forum post to write, and it's related to learning outcomes 1 through 4. That weekly forum post you'll be reading up before you write the post, and then you're going to write it, and it doesn't have to be long. In fact, it's really better if it's not long. Okay, one good idea and expand upon it. And then what's going to happen after you do that is that you're going to then turn around and reply to your classmates that are in your group with you. The groups are usually 4 or 5 people. So I expect you to really dig in with 1 or 2 of them and be sure to acknowledge all of them. Okay, so you're going to go back and you're going to see 4 different people and you're going to make a response to what they've said. Sometimes I've seen these really bloom out and go on and on and on. And they go way past the initial post and response to having these long conversations. It's not super common, but sometimes it's really fun to watch the conversation develop itself. And that's where your learning really happens. It's when you challenge each other or look at what somebody else has said and go, hey, that reminds me of this. What do you think? They're meant to be very conversational, okay? So I'm going to grade on 2 things there. One thing is if you show me you've done your reading, and the second thing is if you show me you've done your thinking, okay? So both of those things are pretty transparent usually with these. Then again, you have your 1,051 pages of required reading that you're going to be doing. And again, be sure you fall into that reading and just find yourself a place where you're enjoying some of it. Okay, stuff you're not enjoying, go ahead and kind of skim it so you can go back to it, but don't feel like you have to become completely in love with every single thing you're reading. This is meant to expose you to a good broad base of Old Testament resources for yourself here. Now we're going to do 2 projects. One is actually not a timeline because we don't know when Genesis was written, right? So I call it an event line, but here it's mentioned as a timeline. And then you're going to get a choice on your second project. Either you do a movie review and reflection or a creative expression based on the psalm that you've chosen for the term. So if you choose the creative expression, which I really love to grade, I've had people write poems, I've had people write songs, I've had people draw things. I had one person do a hand dance one time. That was pretty cool. So you can just like look at your psalm and go wild. Take a photograph, write a paragraph about your photograph, anything you want that's a creative expression that is fun for you to do. I've had a lot of people really enjoy that one, and boy, it's just a great way to get to know people and see what your various kind of interests and talents happen to be. Okay, and then finally our big, long, huge, enormous Old Testament text, exegetical interpretive essay, which we're going to spend the entire term working on bit by bit. We're going to do 4 assignments that build into this final paper assignment. And by the time you get to that week where you're going to turn in the paper, it's going to just roll off your tongue because you're going to be so ready for it. So that one starts with writing an annotated bibliography and then moves through 4 different assignments until we get to the last one. And we'll talk about that more. I'm going to do a separate Loom video on that one. Okay, so one thing you want to keep in mind are the discussions. They're the backbone of the class. They're the place we interact with each other the most. Please make your initial post in the time frame that's provided, because other people need to look at your initial post in order to do their responses. So the only things that I will probably excuse are like if you fall over and break your shoulder. I've got a lot of sympathy for that. Your car gets run into, you develop a case of like sleeping sickness, let me know. If I know about it, we can work with it. And if I don't know about it, that doesn't really reflect really well and tends to get your work marked down. So be sure to be in good communication with me if you have a problem, okay? And that way we can keep things moving along. So now we're back here to the written assignment list, okay? I'm gonna let y'all have a look at that on your own. Please notice that there are some categories here. Paper projects are worth 40% of your total grade. The forum discussions are worth 40% of your total grade. And the projects are worth 20% of your final grade. Okay, so each one of these assignments will be mentioned again, and we'll talk about how to do them and what's associated with them as the course moves on. But I did want you to see that there's a whole page where these are laid out according to what week they're actually due. Okay, this is the event line over here, and then the choice assignment is described a little bit over here for you. So be sure to let me know if you have any questions on any of this stuff for the syllabus. Okay, and here is the reading list. I've also pasted these into each week so that you can have you can go into the module and you can also find the reading for the week listed in the module. But this is your main list if you like to print one out and check things off as you go. Grading rubric here. Notice that we don't give any D's in the class. So it's A, B, C grading, and I'll let you have a chance to read that. But if you do have any questions on the grading rubric, let me know. And also notice that it's your responsibility to review the policy statement on the Canvas course page. Okay, so that is your syllabus. I'm really looking forward to talking some more about every single category here so that you feel like comfortable with it. Any questions, let me know, and we will try to stay on top of communications this way. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you soon.